Welcome everyone to the third Thursday meetup of the West Orlando WordPress Meetup Group. I'm Rob Watson, a co-organizer and host. West Orlando WordPress is an official WordPress meetup group and is affiliated with the main WordPress Orlando and WordCamp US meetup groups. There are so many solutions to host your own online courses in WordPress. Which one do you choose? Tonight we have the world's leading expert in WordPress online courseware plugins and how to market your courses. We are so excited to host Chris Lema, a storyteller and public speaker. Chris has been helping creators and businesses tell their stories more effectively for decades. He's coached technology companies for more than 20 years, built and sold software companies, launched software as a service products, and had more than 8 million visitors to his blog in the last 8 years. While at Liquid Web, he created the Managed WooCommerce platform now run on the Nexcess brand. He also helped acquire several WordPress plugins into the StellarWP brand. Today, he's the GM of LearnDash, the leading online learning solution for WordPress. At this point, I'd like to invite everyone to mute your microphones for the presentation. And Chris, thank you so much for being our presenter this evening. The time is now yours.
Thank you and welcome. It is great to be here, and it's great to see so many of you here. And what I want to do for the next few minutes while we have our time together is talk to you about online courses and the options that you have. Because the reality is you have a whole bunch of options. I want you to think about it this way. Imagine if, right, you decided you wanted to watch a movie tonight. How many different ways could you do it? Well, if you're like the folks in our house, right, we have way too many services. Right? Years ago, we started cutting the cable ties and thought, oh, we'll save a bunch of money. And then the explosion happened, right? And it wasn't just Apple TV Plus or Paramount Plus or Netflix or Hulu. It was everything, right? And YouTube TV was awesome, but then YouTube TV started costing more and more, but there's Disney Plus and Peacock. And so you have a lot of options. And when it comes to online courses, you have a lot of options. And it's important that we start there. What we're going to do over the next few minutes in our time together is walk through the different options, how to think about them, and how you would go about deciding which is right for you. Of course, the decision is completely yours, and it is predicated on your situation, not my advice. But even with your own situation being unique, it turns out there are some roadmaps, some ways to think about things, some considerations to have so that you can make a good choice. So the first paradigm you need to think about is, do you go WordPress and WordPress only, or do you go WordPress plus a SaaS? By now, you know that there are a ton, and you've likely heard their names, of online platforms dedicated to online courses. COVID, among all the different things that COVID did, one of the things it did was it just blew up the online learning space. I mean, we just saw massive growth across tons and tons of different players because people were thinking, okay, I need to figure out what to do online. I need to figure out how to monetize online, and I'm going to do it with courses. So you have two different choices. One is WordPress dedicated. One is WordPress plus SaaS. So the first question is, why would you stick with a WordPress only solution, right? If you were going to go WordPress only, what would be the reasons for doing that? And I'm going to give you the simplest answers ever, right? These are the answers you've likely thought of yourself, which is, hey, it's WordPress. The people who build WordPress solutions for online learning already know that it should be as easy as most of the rest of the things in WordPress. So they make it easy. They also don't design brand new custom designs that don't work anything like the way WordPress does, which means it's going to be familiar. Another reason why you'd consider WordPress and a WordPress plugin for your online learning would be the fact that in many of these cases, in almost all of these cases, no coding is required. What you're really doing is you're installing a plugin and then you're flipping some switches, right? You're turning on some features. You're saying yes or no, depending on how you want it to work, but you're not writing a lot of code. And lastly, and maybe the most importantly, is that it's integrated. That the user that is someone who purchased a course is the user that actually is able to log in and experience a course, is the user that interacts on your WordPress website. There are no multiple different personas. There aren't different user accounts. There aren't things you have to connect dots with and hope that it all works. It's all right there. The moment you go to other platforms, and in fact, I've had several clients who are like, hey, I have one system for my e-commerce, I have another system for my learning, I have another system for my blog, and you realize, oh gosh, the user ends up with potentially multiple passwords to the same site because, well, when I log into my e-commerce, I do this, and when I log in, and that may be because they've integrated a SaaS, it may be because they're using it at a subdomain, but it's not an integrated solution. And so the reason you would look at a WordPress plugin for your online courses is because it's integrated. That's the fourth and maybe most important reason. So what are your options, right? Now, these are ranked, the hierarchy here, not by any specific criteria. They're ranked literally by how long they are. So the top one is the shortest word, and WP courseware is the longest. There's no special meaning. And the color here simply means, hey, I'm the general manager at LearnDash. So I'm letting you know up front that I think this one's the best because I work there. Of course, I want to disclose that dynamic, but that isn't how you make a decision, right? The way you make a decision is predicated on what you need and whether or not this product will do it. You also likely will make a decision predicated on how much money it's going to cost, right? So let's take a look at these in another way, another chart that may help you more. And that is this chart. This is hey, aren't these all basically the same, right? If we're talking about LearnDash and Access Ally and Lifter LMS and WP courseware, LearnPress and Sensei, aren't these all the same? I hear all their names all the time. I hear them batted around like they're equals. Are they equals? And in one way, you'd go, yeah, they basically do very similar things. But in a more specific and critical manner, you're going to discover that even when the column says yes, it doesn't mean yes and it's included in the price. It means yes. And maybe you have to pay more, or maybe it's yes in this context, right? So you'll see a lot of green boxes, a lot of things that say yes, a lot of yes words. Some things are different. Now, I'll be honest, LearnDash has a price point, right? It is not free. Whereas LearnPress, if you look at it here, and Sensei, if you look at it here, those are free products. So we have premium products competing with free products, which logically, you would understand then that if the product at a core is free, then some of the ways it says yes is it says yes, plus you have to pay this add-on, right? You have to pay this. And so you take that into account. Now, I don't have prices listed here because those prices change depending on the day, a promotion, a special weekend, or what have you. But LearnDash is a product that when it comes to this list, right, you get all of these things without paying anything extra other than the fee. And some of these others have small fees attached to it. Some of them you need to buy a different plan. So for Access Ally, instead of the cheapest plan at like $88 a month, you would move up to the $108 a month plan, and then it would all be included in that price, right? So that dollar sign disappears if you just move to the higher plan. But I don't want to go through and explain to you every one of these columns. What I want to do is explain to you the rows, because the rows are what's critical, right? In the case of the first one, distraction-free learning, what we mean is when someone's looking at the course, when they're engaged in the online course, have you removed everything else that would potentially cause them to click and get taken away from the course? That's distraction-free. And almost every one of these does that. Now, in the case of WP courseware, you're going to want a developer to work with the code base to shape that custom template. In the case of LearnPress, you're going to want to pay for one of their themes. Sensei, you likely could do it via a developer, but the rest of these, Lifter LMS, you're going to pay for a theme, but all in all, for the most part, you can get distraction-free learning, which is critical because you want your students to be focused on the learning, not all the rest of what's going on your site. In terms of modern course building, right? You want the ability to go in and say, okay, put a section, now put a couple lessons, now put a quiz under this, now let me fill in the titles. You want the ability to drag and drop those lessons in the right order. And the good news is every one of these does that. The other good news, when you want to sell courses directly or courses via subscription, pretty much all of them will let you do that. Sometimes you have to pay a little extra, but you can sell courses. In the old days, you'd have plugins that would say, here's the product, but it's all free courses. And then you have to pay extra to get the payment. In this case, many of them will just give you access to sell or to make money without an issue. Some of them you do have to pay a little bit extra. For example, Lifter LMS, all those payment gateways, you can buy one at a time, or you can buy one of the bundles and then get access to the payment gateways that you need, Stripe and PayPal and such. Selling subscriptions is another one everyone does and everyone supports, and that's critical because you may want to run a course that lets you charge monthly rather than one time. And selling with WooCommerce, everybody does except Access Ally. That's not because Access Ally hates WooCommerce. It's because it has its own rich subscription and cart system. And so it just says, we don't integrate with those guys. And that is what that is. They have pay once, they have pay in installments, they have pay in subscription. So you're not going to struggle to collect money. But if you're counting on using WooCommerce for some of the other things you're doing, well, then that would be a challenge. Lesson reuse. This is one of the ones that only LearnDash does. It's a big deal. I worked with several customers who build a bunch of courses, build a bunch of lessons, and then they take one of these lessons and they say, it should be in this course, but also this course, and also in this place in this course. And unfortunately, most of the WordPress plugins don't do that. And so obviously that's a big deal. Many of the, about half of these players also support video progression, which is the ability to say, hey, I don't want the person to move to lesson 3 until they've done lesson 2. And the prerequisite is that they have to have completed the video in lesson 2. Then they can go to lesson 3. And they can't even click the next button until the video for lesson 2 is done. That's video progression. Again, available if you're paying for some of the bundles or the larger plans, or available naturally for LearnDash, not available in some of the others. Works with Gutenberg. Hey, a couple years ago, this was not yes across the board, but it is now, and that's good. And support gamification is almost yes for everybody. Now, WP Courseware, it says no. There is a integration with a third-party system, and you can go get that third-party system and then use the integration. So it's kind of a maybe. And Sensei doesn't do it, but I'm pretty sure someone who was imaginative could make it work. If you went and got one of the gamification plugins on its own and then started doing some tie-in. So you may want to put a yes with a developer if you were interested in that. Everybody supports quizzes, some of them without an extra fee, some with an extra fee. Almost all of them support assignments, most of them with an extra fee. Everybody supports certificates, a couple with an extra fee, and almost everyone supports affiliates. And I think even if you got Sensei with WooCommerce and then added affiliate WP to the WooCommerce, you could probably make something work. But that is the lay of the land for WordPress plugins. And I tried not to make that go on forever because we could spend minutes and minutes and minutes on end going through a chart. But that's how we watch and compare these products. So why would you go with a WordPress hybrid solution, right? Why would you go with part WordPress, part not WordPress, or some sort of SaaS, especially if we talked about integration being so critical and all that good stuff? Well, let me tell you. The first reason is features. You may want certain features that are very hard to do inside of WordPress. Now, remember, when you build a WordPress website and you're doing online courses, you're using an underlying data schema that wasn't originally designed for courses. And so many things, as you just saw on the last list, many things are possible, but there are some things that are harder. And so if you wanted to do some of the more complicated stuff, you may discover that that's hard or that the system isn't designed to do it. And that can be an issue. The other dynamic is cart options. You want to start doing fancy stuff like I want to take one product and then I want to sell it 4 different ways: a one-time price, a 2 installment, a 3 installment, and a monthly ongoing continuous subscription. When you want to do single price subscription and 2 installment plans all in one presentation for your cart, that's going to be a lot of work, and it's likely not going to happen. It's going to be very, very complicated and difficult to pull off. And so if you're trying to do that with WordPress, even with WooCommerce, you're going to have some hassle, and you don't necessarily have that if you're using the cart system over at, say, SamCart, where SamCart's like, hey, we've been building complexity into the cart for years. Of course we can do it. Monthly fees, right? Why would you use a hybrid solution? Well, if you have an inexpensive hosting account for your WordPress, because you aren't doing anything that is complex or requires high concurrency, so you're getting away with a sub $5 a host, and then you go get a Kajabi or Podia that you're doing $50 with, that would be cheaper than if you were looking at Access Ally for $80 to $108, $110 a month, right? The monthly fees on a SaaS sometimes are $30, $50, $75, right? So that may be useful to you. And the last one, and most importantly, you might decide, because of where you're sitting today, because of how big the course is, or because of how many people are in it, or because of how many people you're getting ready to enroll, that scale is the driving factor. Now, you can run hundreds, you can run thousands of people on a WordPress instance if you have the right cluster, the right environment, etc. But tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, all logged in concurrently, you're going to become a WordPress and hosting and server guru to pull that off. Yet, if you go with Thinkific, for example, they have those, developers, engineers in place. They have an infrastructure that's in place. They have the scaling in place. And so on the course side, you might just say, hey, I'm going to have the blog over here, and I'm going to have the content and the website over here, and the course is going to be sitting somewhere else, right? I'll do it at a subdomain because it can handle the massive scale. So those are 4 of the reasons. Who are some of the players you might look at? Podia, Kajabi, Thinkific, SamCart, Teachable. Those are some of the biggest names. Again, highest to lowest here is simply ranked in how many letters they have. So not anything special. The color here is because I think Podia is the most advanced and the best one in the list, right? So again, we can take a look. Slightly different criteria when you're talking about online courses using a SaaS player, right? When you're looking at SaaS, let's go through these options here on the left, right? You want quality hosting. Everybody can do that. Everybody can scale. Everybody can handle high traffic, high concurrency. So that's good news. But the moment you move to the next one, which is I want to be able to send out emails, and I want to be able to send emails based on what they've done. I want to be able to send emails based on what they've finished. I want to be able to send emails based on how many courses they've bought or not bought. Podia can do it. Kajabi can do it. The rest really don't play in that space. And so all of a sudden you realize, oh, wow, that's going to mean I have to go buy another email provider rather than having it baked into the price that I'm paying here. So that is expensive. Now, unlimited courses, in the old days, it used to be that they had limits on that. These days, I think maybe one of them is maybe Thinkific or Teachable has it where they have a free plan and it's one course. And then the moment you go to unlimited courses, you go back to their paid plans. It's not that big a deal, but these days now you're paying for all of these. You're going to end up with unlimited courses. You're also going to end up with support for bulk student imports, which again, in the old days, that was a hard one to solve. Student analytics, yes, across the board. Price points and bundles, right? If you want to be able to say, here's this product and I want to offer it with two different packages. We might have called this packaging, but 2 different packages. I want to be able to do these bundles. I want to be able to say, take this course and this course plus this membership piece and put them together in a bundle and price it. You can do that natively with Podia. You can do it with Kajabi. With the others, you have to pay for a higher plan to get that. Now, what about your content, right? If you're a content marketing person, if you want to put a lot of content around your courses, you can do that with Podia. You can do that with Kajabi. Not really a thing with Thinkific, Teachable, or Samcart. You're going to have to, point back to your other website. Revenue reporting is yes across the board. Affiliate features are yes across most of them. In several, you have to pay extra. Thinkific is interesting. It will track it for you, but it's not doing any payouts, which means you have to collect all the data out of the system and then do your own manual payouts. Funnel pages and sales pages for your SaaS, so that when you send people to it, you're not just sending them to the actual course. You could actually send them there to buy. Yes, across the board supports it. And then you get into some of these other pieces that aren't officially in the core part of online learning and yet become so critical to so many different dynamics. Digital downloads, memberships, events and webinars, messaging and community. And that's where you'll see, okay, some of these, the answer is flat out no. Some of these, the answers are, well, kind of, like we'll do digital downloads, but only if it's in a lesson, or we'll do a membership, but only through a custom page. We'll protect a custom page, but not other things. And there is no notion of a post. What you discover, right, like for Teachable, is that the memberships are just for course bundles, meaning this course and this course and this course. There's no other protected content space. And messaging community in Thinkific is available, but it's on a higher plan. But Podia and Kajabi in both cases, right, support it. So what you notice is, other than the affiliate features being extra at Kajabi, both end up, Podia and Kajabi end up being pretty well versed in today's world to deliver high value for online courses. I think the win goes to Podia simply because I think the way it approaches it makes it easier for creators, easier for content and course creators to build it over there. But there's a lot of people using Kajabi, and Podia is newer and younger. So it's worth checking out. But those are the players in the SaaS world, right? So what's my point, right? My point is you have options, right? We've just gone through 10, 11 different players, some WordPress only, some solutions that you could connect to your WordPress site. You have 11, I think it might be even 12, but you have a whole bunch of different options that you can look at and evaluate and say, which one's right for me? And you may decide that because of these features, I'm going to go with this vendor or that vendor. But there's another dynamic that comes into play, and that is that, oh, 1 second, sorry, right? No choice is ever final, right? No choice is ever final, which means you can always adjust. You can always go back and say, oh, I didn't need this before, but now I do. Now, the reason why I really like that integrated solution with WordPress is that when you just change the plugin, you're going to still have the people right in your system. Now, that may not be the case for, depending on how you're doing subscriptions and people's payments. But if they paid one time and so you don't have a subscription problem, you can just import them right back into the other plugin and keep going and be okay. Whereas if you're trying to move from one SaaS to another, it's a little more complicated. So how do you make this final decision? Well, that's the 4 questions that you see here, right? First, how technical are you? If you are very technical, right, then you can choose anything you want. You can choose SaaS and integrate it in a subdomain, or you can choose a plugin and even go in and say, let me tweak how I want this to work, or let me get a different theme and codify that. You can do that all if you're technical. If you're not technical, then you likely want to look at a solution like Podia that does a lot of it for you and you don't have to worry about it. Or you want to look at a solution like a LearnDash, which says, I get everything I need. I don't have to buy any extra stuff. I don't have to do anything but toggle certain switches on and off. The second dynamic is, how much scale do you really need? Now, it's not how much you hope to have. It's not that one day, you think you might have 1 million customers. If you're only sitting with 50, 100 concurrent users right now, it's not going to drive a difference. But if you already have 10,000, 50,000 people in your course and you're starting to feel the slowness already, you happen to be on a WordPress site, this may be the time to think about a SaaS, and an integration between the two. The third is, what are you already paying for, right? If you're already paying for, say, ConvertKit outside, so you're doing email outside, then getting a WordPress plugin to do your course and just connect up through one of the several different plugins that'll support it and let your mail go from there, then you're like, I don't have to pay anymore. It would be silly to go buy a Podia or Kajabi to get mail features that you already have somewhere else. So look at what you're paying for. If you're already paying for the hosting and you're paying for a really robust platform, then maybe you want to start with a WordPress plugin instead of a SaaS. And lastly, how integrated do you need this to be? All right. How tightly coupled does your course have to be with everything else you're doing? I had a customer years ago who used to run their course on a subdomain, and then they were running their e-commerce store on the main site. As a result, when someone said, I want this course, they'd get routed to a subdomain and create an account there. If they wanted to buy a physical hat or t-shirt, they go to the main site and create an account there. And now the same person had two different accounts on the same domain, but one was a subdomain, one was the main domain. And it was a not integrated experience. And it was very frustrating, right? And then what you figure out is there are ways to solve this problem that allows you, right, to keep those two things configured. But it was easier if you either put them on the same site and didn't have the problem. If you're going SaaS, it's not necessarily going to be integrated. You might be using Zapier, you might be using other tools that will cause a delay or sometimes don't connect all the way. And now you're having a new support issue because you have to let them report to you that they can't get in, and then you got to go in and do things manually. So how integrated do you need to be? Those are the 4 questions, along with looking at the charts and figuring out what's right for you. But those are the 4 questions that will help you figure out what's right for you. My name's Chris Lema. You can find me at Chris Lema on Twitter. I also write a blog over at chrislema.com. And as I mentioned before, I'm the GM at LearnDash.com, one of the plugins we talked about tonight.
Wow, Chris, this was amazing. Thank you so much for making this presentation to us. I had no idea there were so many learning management systems out there. I had maybe 2, 3 in my head at the time when I was contacting you, and I'm a subscriber to your newsletter, so I do see some of the things you talk about, but there's only a couple that had stuck in my head. Podia sounds amazing. Like it checks all the boxes, and Kajabi as well. So this is really incredible. This is a ton of information, just like a big download.
Yes, it normally takes many, many hours to pull the charts together, simply because you're trying to figure out, okay, how do you highlight the good stuff that everyone does, but also how do you highlight the differentiators to understand where you're going to fall down or discover, oh, they don't do what I thought they did, or what's going to cost extra, right? And so you get to some of those things where you go, I thought that assignments, right, would be a gimme across the board. And WP Courseware says, oh yeah, but only if it's in a quiz, meaning you have to ask a quiz question that is an assignment that they can upload. And you're like, yeah, that's not what I'm talking about. And then you go, okay, well, if you want anything else, you got to pay here, you got to pay here, you got to pay here. You go, oh, I didn't know that. And it can be frustrating, right? If you bought this one or you bought this one and then discover that it doesn't have what you want, or you have to pay more to get it. And so again, the charts end up helping you kind of figure out, okay, what's the true total cost of running, online courses with one of these different plugins.
So when you started LearnDash, right? And what was your thinking?
I did not. Sorry, just to be clear, I did not start LearnDash. Okay. We bought it a year ago, and I took on the GM role.
Gotcha. So what is your main strategy going forward in trying to differentiate with all of these options available to us? What's your strategy on that?
So I think the real trick, and especially also with these guys, right, when you're looking at all of these players, I think the real thing is you got to figure out who are the different customers that are buying each of these products, right? Are you talking about corporate trainers? Are you talking about K through 12 educators? Are you talking about university customers, right? University teachers? Are you talking about freelancers? Are you talking about agencies that are building 10 or 20 of these every year? Are you talking about knowledge people or people who are domain experts who just want to sell their knowledge, and it's maybe one only field, maybe even one course? Those are 6 completely different microsegments. They all function differently. And you then have to figure out, okay, which of these segments are these guys chasing? which are the ones I'm chasing, and how do I deliver value to those microsegments via my features, via my content, via my education? How do I help them? So that's a lot of the work we're doing right now is charting out the roadmaps for each of those 6 segments and figuring out how we compete across some of these. Because, Podia is great for that knowledge worker, that person who's a domain expert. They're never going to do well selling to a university. We sell to universities all the time and don't have a problem with that. But what you need when you sell to a university is a completely different set of regulatory compliance data that you have to track than what Podia needs to do. And Podia is like, we're not going to get in that space. So you're constantly evaluating segments to understand needs, then looking back at those competitors and figuring out where are you going to take a corner and where do you let them take a corner.
Yeah, that's going to be really helpful, especially for people who are not well versed in all of these line items that you have listed here. They can look at them and go, well, that could mean 7 different things to 7 different people. Having a story, a customer journey that people can follow to kind of figure out which, where they fit with LearnDash or with any of these others is really, really critical. So yeah, that's really great. Well, again, thank you so much for presenting today. I have learned a ton. I'm sure everybody else has learned a ton as well. We would love to have you come back at some point and present on anything you wish.
Absolutely. Not a problem at all. Thank you guys so much and have a great night.
Thank you. You too.